Do you ever wonder what might happen if some of the world's most powerful emerging economies decided to stop using the US dollar? What if they found alternatives, bypassing the currency that underpins global trade and finance? Well, US President-elect Donald Trump has a warning for them, and it's as bold as it gets. Commit to sticking with the dollar, or face 100% tariffs on your goods. Yes, you heard that right. Trump isn't mincing words. And the stakes couldn't be higher. This warning targets BRICS, a bloc comprising Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and now Ethiopia, Iran, Egypt, and the UAE. These nations represent a massive chunk of the global economy, with more than 40% of the world's population, 37% of global GDP, and 23% of global trade. Let's break this down. What's driving Trump's ultimatum? Is this a power move or a misstep? And what does it mean for the US, the BRICS nations, and the rest of the world? Chapter 1. The BRICS bloc and de-dollarization. Why this matters. The dollar isn't just the US's currency, it's the backbone of the global financial system. It accounts for 58% of foreign exchange reserves and dominates international trade, from oil deals to debt securities. Its supremacy is backed by trust in the US economy and the unmatched liquidity of Treasury bonds. But the dollar's dominance has also made it a political tool. Washington has used it to sanction countries, freeze assets, and cut nations off from global payment systems. This weaponization of the dollar has sparked resentment, especially among BRICS nations. Russia and China, in particular, are aggressively pushing for alternatives. Russia, crippled by sanctions after its invasion of Ukraine, is trading more in rubles and yuan. China, meanwhile, envisions the yuan playing a larger role globally. At an October BRICS summit, Russian President Vladimir Putin said, "We are not refusing, not fighting the dollar, but if they don't let us work with it, what can we do? We then have to look for other alternatives." Chapter 2. Trump's threat. 100% tariffs on BRICS nations. Last weekend, Trump posted on Truth Social the idea that the BRICS countries are trying to move away from the dollar while we stand by and watch is over. He declared that the US requires a commitment from these nations. They must pledge not to create a new BRICS currency or support any other currency to replace the dollar. If they don't, they'll face 100% tariffs on their exports to the US. Let's put that into perspective. Imagine a Brazilian car priced at $50,000 being imported into the US after Trump's tariff. That car would cost $100,000, effectively doubling its price. The same applies to electronics from China, raw materials from South Africa, or any other goods from BRICS nations. But Trump's tariff threat isn't just an economic issue. It's a bold geopolitical move aimed at preserving the dollar's dominance. The question is, will it work? Chapter 3. The economics of tariffs. Who pays the price? Trump often claims tariffs only hurt the exporting countries. In his words, "It's not going to be a cost to us. It's going to be a cost to another country." But economists argue otherwise. Tariffs raise the cost of imported goods, and those costs are typically passed on to consumers. If Trump were to impose 100% tariffs, Americans would feel the pain in their wallets. Prices for cars, electronics, and everyday essentials could skyrocket. Imagine paying double for your favorite tech gadget or car just because it's made in China, India, or Brazil. Additionally, US businesses that rely on imported materials from BRICS countries could face higher costs, which could lead to layoffs or price hikes. This, in turn, could stoke inflation, a concern that's already troubling the US economy. Chapter 4. Do tariffs help or hurt the economy? Trump frequently turned to tariffs as a strategy to boost the US economy, arguing they would bring in trillions of dollars for the government. Recently, he proposed implementing a 10% to 20% tariff on all $3 trillion worth of imported goods each year. with a steep 60% tariff on products from China. But do tariffs really help the economy? Or do they cause more harm than good? Experts are divided. Tariffs can sometimes protect domestic industries from foreign competition, but they often lead to higher prices for consumers. For example, when Trump imposed tariffs on $380 billion worth of goods in 2018, he claimed that foreign countries would bear the cost. However, a study from the National Bureau of Economic Research showed the opposite. The entire cost of those tariffs fell on U.S. consumers. Another study by the New York Federal Reserve found that Trump's tariffs cost the average American household $831 a year. Looking ahead, tariffs could lead to rising inflation. Goldman Sachs, one of the nation's largest investment banks, warned in September that Trump's proposed tariffs could increase inflation by as much as 1.2% in 2025. That's a big deal, especially when paired with other factors already pushing up prices. In addition to economic goals, Trump has tied tariffs to other political issues. Recently, he suggested slapping a 25% tariff on Mexico and Canada and a 10% tariff on China unless they help the U.S. address fentanyl overdoses and illegal immigration. He even spoke with Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum and hosted Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau at Mar-a-Lago to discuss the issue. While all three leaders described their meetings as productive, no firm commitments were made, and Trudeau returned home Saturday without assurances that Canada would be spared from the proposed tariffs. Chapter 5. De-dollarization, a real threat or political hype? Despite all the talk about de-dollarization, the dollar's dominance remains robust. It's true that the share of dollars in foreign reserves has dipped slightly, from 71% in 2000 to 58% in 2024, but it's still the global leader by a wide margin. A report from ING in October 2024 found that the share of US dollars used in SWIFT transactions has actually increased since 2016. Moreover, the dollar continues to dominate international debt securities, interest rate derivatives, and global transactions. But here's the thing: Trump's coercive tactics could accelerate the very de-dollarization he's trying to prevent. Forcing countries to use the dollar could make them feel like they're doing the U.S. a favor, pushing them further toward alternatives. Brad Setzer, a senior fellow at the Council on Foreign Relations, criticized Trump's approach, saying, "Trying to force countries to use the dollar makes its use appear to be a favor to the U.S. It isn't a good look and suggests a lack of confidence in the dollar." Chapter 6. BRICS, a divided bloc with competing goals. One of the reasons de-dollarization hasn't gained significant traction is the lack of unity within BRICS. While Russia and China are leading the charge, India has made it clear that its goal is to internationalize the rupee, not to dethrone the dollar. India's Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar said, "We have never actively targeted the dollar. That's not part of either our economic policy or our political or strategic policy." Even within BRICS, rivalries abound. China and India, for instance, have territorial disputes that make cooperation difficult. And while the idea of a common BRICS currency has been floated, Putin himself admitted it's not a priority right now. Chapter 7. The ripple effects. Trump's tariff threat could also strain U.S. relations with key allies. Brazil, for instance, uses its dollar earnings from trade with China to buy U.S. goods. Imposing tariffs on Brazil could disrupt this cycle, hurting both economies. India, a growing U.S. ally, could also reconsider its alignment with Washington if Trump follows through. And while trade with Russia is already limited due to sanctions, a broader trade war with BRICS nations could have far-reaching consequences for the global economy. Chapter 8. A look back. Trump's tariff playbook. This isn't Trump's first time using tariffs as a weapon. During his presidency, he imposed tariffs on Canada, Mexico, and China. While these moves sometimes brought concessions, such as Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau agreeing to tighter border controls, they also came with significant costs. The US-China trade war disrupted global markets and hurt American farmers, many of whom relied on Chinese demand for their crops. In this case, imposing 100% tariffs on BRICS goods could have even more dramatic consequences, given the bloc's economic heft. Chapter 9. What could happen if Trump follows through? If Trump imposes 100% tariffs, several scenarios could unfold. First, a full-blown trade war. BRICS nations could retaliate with tariffs on US goods, disrupting global supply chains. This would hurt American exporters and further drive up costs for consumers. Second, accelerated de-dollarization. Nations wary of US dominance could rally around local currencies or digital payment systems, reducing their reliance on the dollar. Third, domestic economic fallout. Higher tariffs would fuel inflation and strain the US economy, hurting both businesses and consumers. Chapter 10. The dollar's resilience and the road ahead. Despite these challenges, the dollar's resilience is undeniable, as Michael Pettis, a senior fellow at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, noted. As long as the US is the only country willing and able to offer unfettered access to its domestic financial markets, and is willing to run huge trade deficits, BRICS nations have little choice. However, Pettis also pointed out a contradiction in Trump's policies. Reducing the US trade deficit, a key Trump talking point, would mean fewer dollars circulating globally, which could weaken the dollar's dominance. So, what's the solution? Analysts suggest that instead of doubling down on tariffs, the US should address the root causes of de-dollarization, namely, the perception that it uses the dollar as a political weapon. Building trust and fostering cooperation could do more to secure the dollar's future than any tariff threat. Chapter 11. Is Trump's plan a masterstroke or a misstep? Trump's 100% tariff threat is certainly bold, but it's also fraught with risks. While it aims to protect the dollar's dominance, it could end up undermining it by alienating allies and accelerating the search for alternatives. BRICS, for all its talk of de-dollarization, remains a divided bloc with competing priorities. The idea of a common currency is far from reality, and the dollar's entrenched role in global finance means its dominance isn't going away anytime soon. But Trump's aggressive tactics could backfire, creating the very conditions for de-dollarization he fears most. The stakes are high, and the world will be watching closely to see how this unfolds. If you found this breakdown insightful, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more deep dives into the most pressing global issues. Let's keep the conversation going. What do you think about Trump's tariff threat? Share your thoughts below.